Let's bring in Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, Fox News contributor, former National Security Advisor for Vice President Pence, and a key advisor to President Trump. First off, General, your response to the fact that when in trouble, we give Poland missile defense, we never gave Ukraine missile defense, and we can't find a way to get the 1980s MiGs into Ukrainian hands.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for having me. Look, this makes a lot of sense for them to get these fighters. The MiG-29 is a fourth-generation fighter. The Poles have got about 29 of them, and it would make a lot of sense to me to give them somehow, and be creative how you do it, get them to them, because then it obviates the need for a no-fly zone from NATO or from the UN or anybody else, because you can actually team these aircraft up. Even though it would be a little bit, shall we say, creative and interesting, where you could team them up with an AWACS, because put them on the guard frequency, the radio frequency, a NATO frequency, that because they're going to be equipped with NATO radios as well, because they're a NATO ally, and be able to cover at least the western part of Ukraine. So I don't know why we're doing this. It almost seems like we're rubbing our hands in a negative manner, Brian. Every time they come up with something, we come up with a reason not to do something. We should be coming up with ways to do something, and that's where I'd grab my advisors if I was advising President Biden. And you put them up in the EOB, the Executive Office Building. It's sort of like you feed them cold pizza and warm beer. And you keep coming up with solutions time after time to solve this problem.
Obviously, the Poles said, "I want you to send these MiG fighter jets into Poland," and the U.S. said, "Well, it looks like we're giving it to them." Are we that worried about the Russians? They can't handle the Ukrainians. They're going to go start fight a war with the Poles because they want to give them some old jets? I mean, can we just be a little bit bold for a change? So let's take a look, if we can, General. I know you actually do this. I hope people listen to you, because you also have about 4 or 5 great ideas that we're not doing. But let's take a look at the big map, if we can, and we see where most of the fighting is taking place. Obviously, the red area is Russia occupied. The arrows is where the Russians are moving. And if I can, it looks like where we just had Benjamin Hall, it looks like they're trying to encircle Kyiv, but they're always trying to encircle Kyiv. What's next for them?
Well, look, Brian, the center of gravity, the most important thing they've got to do is they've got to somehow take Kyiv. They've got to decapitate the government. And that's a term that's used to basically replace the government, because Zelensky's becoming Churchillian. He's standing up to them. He's standing up to Putin. He's being very dramatic and very forceful in his language. So they've got to cut him out, and they've got to somehow take the capital city. And that should be their main effort, and it's not. They've kind of broken up a lot of their main efforts to the south, to the east, and to the north. But until they take Kyiv, they've got a problem. Here's their big problem. That's a big city. It's a city of almost 3 million. It's a 2,000-year-old city. And once they go in there, it will eat them up. And what I mean by that is armies don't like to go into cities, because the ability to use forces in cities is tough. It takes a lot more force, and they're going to be killing a lot of civilians. And that, I believe, will change the dynamic. But right now, they've got a problem. If they're not focusing on Kyiv, the rest doesn't matter. They've got to get to the capital city, and if they don't do it, then they're going to lose.
Report is they don't want to get out of their trucks, and we know the Ukrainians can fight. And you've told me this: the ratio is 5 to 1. You only need 1 for every 5 of an invading force to protect them, and plus, you know, the Ukrainians are motivated. I'm shocked we're not talking about it in Odessa. They told us this was going to happen over the weekend. I am shocked they're not moving to try to take a city besides Kherson. What do you think is happening? Like, why did they bypass, for the most part, Kharkiv? Why are they focusing there? Why didn't they move further in the south, where they more experienced forces are?
Yeah, look, here's what I'm going to put it in kind of simple terms. If this was a fight and you were on a scorecard, the Russians are losing this fight. And they're now seeing that they've got a real problem, because Odessa is their 3rd largest city. It's a seaport city. But again, if they go into the cities, they're going to have a big problem. And they're diluting combat power from what should be their main effort, which is Kyiv. And I think they're now trying to figure out, how do we do this? Because in fact, we're actually losing. Every day that goes by, and we're now getting to day 15, they're losing this war. They're losing in the information space, where the entire world to see what's going on. They're losing in the military space. They're being beaten by Ukrainians. And the whole world's going, boy, we thought these guys were really 10 feet tall. They're not. They're about 5.5. And they're not, it's almost like they're, I hate to say this, because I'm probably insulting the state, but it's almost like the Vermont National Guard with nuclear weapons. They're not performing very well at all. Everybody is saying that. Everybody sees it. So what they do, if I was advising, which, you know, God forbid he takes any of my advice, and you tell the Russians, you better focus in on your main effort, because if you don't capture Kyiv, take Kyiv, you have lost this war.
Understood, General. And I just say, can we be a little bit bold? I don't want to risk World War III either. But when you see that guy sitting there addressing Parliament, U.S. Senate, and just asking for help, and we won't even give him old jets, it is pathetic. Yeah. Especially, you really think they're going to go invade Poland when they can't take a small city in the Ukraine? It's unbelievable. What happened to our spine? General, thanks so much.